Hi everyone, this is a quick run through of the Departmental Scaling application. It's a review of both the RFP and the application document. The timeline for applying for the Departmental Scaling is the same as the timeline for applying for the round 16 of textbook transformation grants. The deadline is January 13th of 2020. As you'll see through the description, the application is going to be emailed to me instead of going through the usual grant program. But other than that, same things apply. January 31st is the day of notifications. At least 2 team members are going to attend the kickoff meeting at Middle Georgia State University. And projects can last up to spring 2021, allowing for a year from the award to the completion of the project. So these are based off of textbook transformation grants, Affordable Learning Georgia's grant program that has been running since 2014. These grants have been providing opportunities for faculty and professional staff to team up, take a little bit of extra time to transform their course to affordable materials. OER, or Open Educational Resources, have been a very effective method of doing this, but there are other affordable materials out there as well, including library resources and other copyrighted but free and open access materials. And there are also some grants out there that have allowed teams to take previously existing open textbooks that maybe they didn't like, or maybe they had a problem with, and revise them to really fit the class that they wanted to teach. So that's pretty important. It's not just about adopting materials, bringing them in, and then transforming the course. It's also about revising materials, or improving them, or creating new ancillaries around them. How this time is funded depends on the institution. Some institutions will take the grant and transform that into a course release. Others will do overload pay. Others will do summer pay. Some of them will even do professional development instead. That really is on the institution and the institution's policies, how that part of it gets done. But basically, these grants, just like other textbook transformation grants, fund the time that it takes to get this project done. Departmental scaling is a little bit different, though. We've set aside additional funding in the ALG budget to scale up previous textbook transformation grants projects, or if you found a project that had some OER implementations and you want to scale it up to department level and it wasn't one that was a grant project, you've been in contact with us and you've let us know that you had some different ideas. That's also completely valid. This is still an invited project. And because it's an invited application round, there isn't as much competition as the regular round 16, where all of the applicants are going to be scored by 3 peer reviewers each and then gone through administrative reviews. There are still administrative reviews, but there is not the 3 peer reviewer review round. There is not unlimited funding that we held for this application round. So even though it is an invited round, not everybody that applies may get a grant this time around. But that doesn't mean that in another round where we do have more funding available, we could do that. We hope to keep departmental scaling up as another way to bring more textbook cost savings and the transformation of courses into the USG. And of course, this is not just about OER. It's also about library materials. It's also about open access free materials that aren't open. And I'll talk about what OER is in a second, just in case you don't know. And some low-cost materials, stuff that is $40 or under. That applies as a low-cost material. And of course, departmental scaling is about scaling a smaller project to department-wide all sections. So not just a team of 2 faculty within a department that has 16 faculty teaching different sections of a particular course, but everybody teaching that. That's why these awards are a little bit bigger than your usual $10,800 textbook transformation grant. It's a big team effort, and they are structured to bring more people on these teams. So what is open and what is OER? Well, I could have an entire day-long seminar on what open is, let alone what OER are, how to work with them, how to find them. But I'll break this down very quickly here. Open in general, when we're talking about education, we talk about the 5 R's. So any educational resources that enable these 5 practices to take place. You can retain the educational resource, which means that it's not disappearing ink. You didn't rent it. You don't have to re-rent it. You can always keep it. You can reuse it in any way you like. That kind of goes along with retain. It won't ever disappear. But also, you can use it in any context. You could publicly perform an open educational resource. That would be totally fine. You could use an anatomy and physiology open textbook as your reference when you're walking around doing your clinicals in nursing. You can revise the educational resources that are open. You can customize them for your students. So if you don't particularly like how an author phrased a particular part of a chapter, you could change that to have it meet your own teaching style and your own theoretical foundation. So revision is a really big part of the open educational resources world, because everybody has a different way of teaching things, different types of teaching styles, preferences, a different kind of voice when it comes to bringing your knowledge of these foundational courses to your students. Remixing is a little bit different than revising. It's not just about customizing, but it's about bringing different OER together in one place. There are some courses out there where you may be assigning 6 or 7 different books to a student because one of them just won't suffice. None of them really meet the comprehensiveness needed for that course. That is valid, but sometimes it can get pretty expensive if you're having students buy that many of them. You can't just take all of those books, combine them into one textbook, and say, here is this new open textbook. With open educational resources, you can. You could take chapter 1 of one open textbook and you can put it with chapters 3, 4, 6, and 7 of another one, and that is totally fine because you are mixing open educational resources together, ones that you can reuse and can revise and can remix and can keep. You can combine them too. And of course, the big one for students is that you can redistribute these. You can give these to anyone for free. If, for example, if you authored a scholarly article in a commercial publication, often you will not even have the rights to email your own authored article to a family member because the rights are now with the publisher. With open educational resources, you can email those immediately. You can put them in your course management system. So for example, you could have them hosted in D2L right when students get there on day 1 or even before day 1. Redistribution is the access part of this. Everyone is able to download these very quickly and then get them and keep them for free. So you redistribute them, and when you get them, you can retain them and reuse them. For OER, the mechanism to make these open and meet the 5 R's is a Creative Commons license. This enables the 5 R's with at least an attribution restriction. That attribution restriction is the building block for all Creative Commons licenses except throwing something into the public domain, which is CC0. That's a completely different thing that we don't even need to talk about. But attribution means that you need to attribute the original work you used when you're making a new work with an open resource. That way, even if you're copying it verbatim, you need to make sure that you're attributing that work. But that way you have a citation trail. For example, if you have faculty who are going to make a new open material, they may be worried that someone may twist that around and then not attribute the original or say that it was theirs when it wasn't. Attribution keeps that history going. It really makes sure that everybody knows where an open resource came from and where it can go next. For more about this, go to creativecommons.org. They are the ones who provide these licenses. They are in their 4th iteration, and they have an international amount of recognition. Entire countries use Creative Commons to open license their government works, for example. So that's all great, but where can you find OER? Well, we have a Finding Open Textbooks guide at affordablelearninggeorgia.org. These are some big URLs, so you may not want to remember these. But if you go to the affordablelearninggeorgia.org site and mouse over Open Textbooks, you can find the Finding Open Textbooks guide there, along with the selection criteria page, which is a set of standards for quality in open educational resources, and that divides them into textbooks and other stuff, ancillary materials, the materials that supplement and surround an open textbook or are just used as their own in an open course. So that was just a quick rundown of what grants are, what OER are, kind of laying the foundation here. Now we're going to get into how these work. When funding is given for a grant for a big project, like we usually do these for large-scale textbook transformation grants, there is a $5,000 maximum per team member and at least 2 team members in the project. But because we know it's such a large group, we set the maximum award at $30,000. That gives 6 people able to take the maximum amounts, or a lot more people being able to take a little bit less than that for a grant. There is still, within this, you have to have $800 for travel and overall project expenses. That doesn't make the maximum award $30,800. You have to put that within the budget. So that is something that really has to be taken into account. So it's really not exactly 30,000, 5,000 times 6. It's a little bit different. You do have to keep that 800 in there for at least 2 people to travel to the kickoff meeting at Middle Georgia State University. However, if you do not use all of this $800 for the travel, that's totally fine. I mean, maybe you're at Middle Georgia State University. In that case, you probably won't need to pay much of anything for travel. This is for travel and overall project expenses. So after the travel funding, you can use these for software, for travel for professional development, for hosting a workshop for your colleagues. This kind of thing can be pretty open on how you use the rest of it, so long as it serves the purpose of the proposal that you're sending, which is the statement of work on the SLA. So these are the same thing as the large-scale transformations. It is a departmental scaling transformation. It is a department-wide project. So it is a large-scale transformation with a $30,000 maximum award, $5,000 maximum per team member. At least 2 team members go to the kickoff meeting. And at least 2 team members need to be on a team for this grant to exist. With a department-wide project, there should be more than 2 people on the project itself. You will need, at the very least, the faculty who are going to guide the process, the review process, the revision process, someone who manages everything. For example, sometimes you have an instructional designer who guides the design of instructional resources, but also is a project manager that makes sure that everything is on time. That is a valid way to do that. So yeah, you can incorporate other project expenses into the grant as well. Just make that clear in the budget section that you need a particular software platform, or you need to contract out the creation of a new open website or a platform for something that you're going to host internally. That kind of thing needs to be made very clear within the plan before you get to the budget section. Otherwise, we'll look at the budget section, see that something is budgeted out, and we won't have any idea why it exists. So be sure that if you have something in the budget section, it is very clear what that does within your plan. And funding works by going to the institution to cover the team and the team members' time. This depends, of course, on the institution's policies. For example, at Kennesaw State University right now, there's a lot more professional development funding going on with grants than there is release time or overload pay. At other institutions, it is release time or overload pay. At some institutions, you can't pay for a course release with the amount that you might get in a grant. With others, there are salary cap restrictions that may clash with it, but there's enough flexibility within a service level agreement to be able to help you get this done one way or another. And the funding process is we disperse 50% of the grant on the execution of the SLA, which means that it's signed by both the institutions and the Board of Regents, and 50% once the final report is submitted. This is all done through invoices, so there's one invoice that's sent with the SLA or right after it gets signed, and there's one invoice once the final report is submitted. And this is just another quick reminder in here that there's $800 designated for the kickoff meeting. The institutional sponsors are responsible for fund disbursement. Sometimes this just means that the sponsors will be working with the business office and maybe they have more experience in doing so, so that's great. Other times they may be managing a departmental account themselves. Again, this depends on the institution and how this stuff is structured. Because these budgets are supported by state funds, you need to make sure that you're complying with state policies, BOR policies, and institutional policies. This, for example, an easy one to think about is if you're using funding to buy food that doesn't meet state guidelines, it's a really interesting policy. Like if you were trying to host a workshop on open educational resources, you could have that workshop. You could use all of the computer materials and everything that's provided at the institution, but you wouldn't be able to buy food for that workshop unless you had like a completely different way of funding it that isn't state funds. So your business office will know about this stuff and they'll be able to help you out as you move forward, or your grants office or your research office, which would provide you with even more specific support on exactly this. So for departmental scaling, there's only a couple of required elements to an application. The first one is the application itself. This was sent in a previous email, but if you need it, please email me and I will send you another copy of it. This isn't on the ALG site in a big visible way because it's an invited round, and in an invited round we really don't want to make sure we really want to make sure that people aren't interpreting it the wrong way and sending in departmental scaling applications when they weren't supposed to. So if you have any questions on this, if you need another copy of the application, I'm right here. And the link is right here as well. If you're looking at this from the video, there are some places where there are spaces. Those aren't spaces, those are underscores. Hyperlink doesn't always show that very well. You'll also need a letter of support. And this is a signed one. It's usually in PDF because it needs to be signed. And that is provided from the sponsoring area, usually one level above the project lead. So if the project lead is the department chair but not the dean, then maybe the dean is going to be the sponsor. If the project lead is the dean, then it may be someone in academic affairs who is signing this, maybe the vice president or the provost. If the VPAA or provost is a project lead, which hardly ever happens, but I would not completely dismiss it, then it would be the president who would be signing it at that point. So let's take a look at the application form itself. I'm going to switch this out for a second to shift the view to the application form. Here we go. So this application form has a couple of things with it. The first part is the contact information, the basic info on you and your team. So your institution, name, email, phone number, position, and title. The submitter can be the same person, or it could be somebody else. So let's say that you're the project lead and the grants office is submitting this on behalf of you. The grants office person is the submitter at this point. But if you're submitting the application, it's the same thing down here as up here. It's going to be the same exact information. Down here is the team member listing. So we just need name and email address. This is important once something is accepted because we need a way to quickly get everybody on a mailing list, on the newsletter, to make sure everybody's up to speed. So that's why we have this spot here. And we can go up to 8 team members. If you want to expand it, you totally could. You can go to table design and you could just start adding some rows here. By just kind of inserting below. You could do that, but not right now. There we go. If you have any more team members to add than that, and you can't possibly fit them all here, you could do that in this text box as well. The sponsor's name, title, department, and institution go right here. It would be the same person on the letter of support. The project information and impact data. So this is very important. So the requested amount of funding, so it's not only 30,000. This is the maximum amount. This is going to be the amount that you're requesting. Course names and course numbers, if it's just one, that's totally fine. Psych 1101, Introduction to General Psychology, something like that. Final semester of project. If you have a project that can be really efficiently done by the end of fall 2020, which is the end of December, you can pick that as your final semester. Most people will probably pick spring 2021. It's a little more feasible, and that'll be at the end of spring 21 that it'll be finished. So this is a little bit different when it comes to departmental scaling as opposed to other projects, because what we're looking at here are projects that had some OER implementation or no cost or low cost implementation and probably were saving students money at the time. And what we're looking at for departmental scaling is how does that improve? So we're looking at summer semester before, and this is before the department-wide implementation happens. How many students are already affected by these no-cost and low-cost savings? Then the summer semester after, how many students are going to be affected once the project is done? Now that doesn't mean the summer of 2021. That means you're in your average summer semester so long as this project's resource implementation continues. So it's not like you have to have your fall 2021 projected enrollments and then your fall 2022 ones or something like that. This is an average per year. So fall semester, spring semester before, spring semester after, same thing here. Original required commercial materials. Now for a department, this is going to be a little bit different. Usually we have the title, the author, and the price of the commercial resources that were used in a couple of sections by a couple of faculty. But because you have an entire department, this may be a longer list. So just provide the most frequently used materials here, because we really do not need an essay on the original required commercial materials. We need the most prevalent ones. And that can be one set of materials, or maybe you have two. Maybe there's a Pearson and a Cengage that have been used. You can use both of those. But if there are 30 instructors in this one section, in this one course, and all the sections mostly have two sets of commercial materials, and a couple of other people use this third one that's out there, and a couple of other people use this fourth one, and then there's a fifth one and a sixth one, those are not going to be such significant differences that it would need to be here as a big giant part of the application. The most prevalent materials are fine. The average price of the original required materials per student section enrollment. So this is, if you have a student going into your course, what is the average price they are going to pay per section of that, per enrollment in a section of the course? So if you have two textbooks and you have a student coming in and they are going to take either one of those, what's the average price the student would have to pay? Because we're looking for one number. It's not an easy thing to do, but at the same time, it's really the only way that we can get this data all in one place and keep it as accurate and clean as possible. The average post-project cost per student section enrollment. So this is after the project takes place. Are you using a low-cost homework system? How much would it cost now? So then you wind up with, given all of this stuff, the average post-project savings per student section enrollment. You take the original required materials, you take the post-project cost, and you find what the student is saving now as opposed to before. Then you have the projected total new annual student savings per academic year. That is per student savings right here times the amount of students that are affected in an academic year. That is the total new annual student savings per academic year. That's usually somewhat of a big number with departments. This part is not as important when it comes to metrics, but it is important if you're using an OpenStax textbook. If you're going to adopt one, say yes or no to this. That way I can let OpenStax know that you're going to be, as a department, pursuing using an OpenStax textbook. They can reach out and get all of the faculty connected with their instructor resources, which is a lot easier than having faculty just kind of on their own try to apply. Here is the big part of where you're going to be describing your plan, the narrative section of the proposal. So you've got the project goals right here. These are the goals for a project, and it's not just let's put these OER into the classroom. It's more about what are you trying to do. So cost savings, sure, that is part of the goal. But are you doing those in order to facilitate student success more broadly? Are you doing it for equity within a particular group? Are you doing it for open pedagogy, where you're going to enable students to change materials and do a lot more hands-on work? Are you going to be creating new things that are shared globally and will help other instructors as this goes on? The project goals should be big and lofty, and they're the things that you're trying to get at with this project, not just we are going to do the project. The statement of transformation, this is all about how your project is unique. Why should it happen? So here's what the course is, here's what the department's doing, here are the materials that are used, here's what the institution's all about, here's where our students are coming from. Are they having trouble passing this course? Is it a gateways to completion kind of course where there are a lot of students who are kind of hinging on this as to their success at the institution? Or is it more of an elective course? This kind of description is really important here. And then describe what is going to happen, why this project is going to impact the stuff you just described. Now, this isn't a description of the plan in the nitty-gritty details. This is all about this project is aiming to affect that by doing this and this. It's kind of like connecting this description to the project goals. Here is also where you would probably have literature if you want that. For example, if you're talking about a particular course that was found in the scholarly literature to have a really high failure rate, or it's having trouble in recent years with retention, you would be citing that stuff here. So there's going to be more citations in the statement of transformation than there will be anywhere else. But if it's not needed, then it's not needed. We don't need citations. We're not counting them. This isn't a research paper for sure. The transformation action plan is all about the plan. This is the nitty-gritty details. What is each member of your team going to do? Are they instructors of record and they're just going to be teaching with these materials? Are they going to be reviewing them? Are they going to be creating things? Do you have a faculty instructor who's also an instructional designer, and are they going to be overseeing the reflective questions that are on a new set of modular materials that you're creating? Those kinds of roles need to be illustrated here. Then look at the existing OER that are out there. Applications that don't include a review of OER are okay. They still will qualify. But the more prepared you are for this, the more feasible it looks to us and to any reviewer out there. So having a review of the current state of OER done, that makes a stronger case for whatever it is you want to do. If you find that there are some really good open textbooks out there and you're going to combine them together into a remix textbook that fits what your students need to learn, that's really cool. If there's nothing out there and you guys are going to get together and make an entirely new open textbook, then this is the case for it, doing that review. Any redesign work that's necessary. So not just making an OER, but trying to redesign your course. Do you have to do stuff in the LMS? Do you have to look at your agreed upon learning outcomes and align stuff with the resources at that point? Accessibility work. Maybe you already have some materials that are ready to go, except that they are totally not accessible for students with disabilities. Maybe accessibility work winds up being part of this transformation. And then the plan for providing open access to the new materials. So we already have a plan. We have Galileo Open Learning Materials. It's a repository. Ever since we launched it in late 2016, we've already had about 500,000 downloads, both from the United States and the state of Georgia, to an international English-speaking population. And so we will be hosting those materials. But if you are using other platforms, let us know. Some people may be using SoftChalk Cloud, for instance, and they have a repository in SoftChalk Cloud to share that stuff openly. It's basically web-based resources in that case. So if you're doing that, share that here so we can point out to it. If you're doing it through LibGuides too. Quantitative and qualitative measures. So in every textbook transformation grants project, to answer three basic questions. Was there a positive, negative, or neutral change for the perception of the new materials, the performance in student learning outcomes, and the course level retention through drop, fail, and withdraw rates, or grade D, grade F, and withdraw rates depending on what your institution keeps. And because institutions do this in varied ways, you may be answering this slightly different ways. But applications can go way beyond this too. For example, if you have somebody on your team that has good amount of statistical experience and they're going to use SPSS or RStudio to determine significance, to disaggregate the data and see if any particular groups are affected by OER more than others, or to completely discount something like the like a different instructor confounding the outcomes between previous courses and ones that are taught with OER. If within all of this research you need IRB approval, indicate this here and what you're going to do. It's a good way for you to start thinking about what you'll need to do to contact the IRB. Some groups do not think about it until they get to the kickoff meeting and go, oh wait, I think we have to do that. That's why we have it on the application. It's really to get you thinking about what are you going to have to do at your institution. The timeline needs to align itself very well with the transformation action plan. So if you've described something happening up here, then you'll want to describe the deadlines for it down here. If you're going to have some really big meetings that signify the end of a process, if you're going to have particular components done by a particular point, if you're going to then do a review and do revisions, that stuff, those big deadlines need to go on the timeline. And be sure to have your final report at the end of the final semester here. If you say that you're going to have your final report done in spring of 2025, we won't be able to deal with that because the final report needs to be done at the end of the project and the project needs to end by spring 2021. So the final semester of the project needs to line up with the timeline as well. So the one that you picked up at the top needs to be in the timeline here. For budget, this needs to meet the plan. It needs to meet the amount that was requested at the top of the page. And it needs to meet the timeline too. So if you have personnel with particular roles who are going to do particular things, they get mentioned here in the budget. If you have a platform, like I mentioned in the slides, be sure to be clear about that in the plan before you include it in the budget here. And you need to include $800 in travel funding within the $30,000 maximum. So this isn't $30,800, it is a $30,000 maximum. Now the sustainability plan, you need to make sure that you are planning for what happens after the project. We can't just keep giving out giant grants to everyone to just keep re-adopting OER. These need to be planned sustainably from the beginning. So how will you update course materials? How will you maintain them? Are you going to bring this over to another course maybe? Maybe not just more course sections, because obviously we're scaling it up department-wide, but are you maybe thinking of working with another institution on this in the future? And then if you have future plans for sharing this work, if you're going to go to a conference and talk about what happened, that would be here as well, because that's very interesting to us. And then there's just a note on the letter of support here, because you need to have a letter of support. So it's just the same kind of thing that I talked about before. So this is the entire application form. We've gone through the whole thing. I'll just go right back into the slideshow. Now, we do not have a peer review process the way that we do with the competitive rounds with round 16. This is an invited departmental scaling project. But we are still evaluating these because we do not have infinite funding, and we want to make sure that every project that we do award is very impactful and feasible and has good measures on it and is very clear. So the weighted rubric, we still use that for review here. The highest weighted items are the transformative impact on student savings, and the organization, the planning, and the feasibility. Now you can also say that there are other impacts that will happen in this. That's something that you can do in this project, and we can make the argument towards it. A lot of these focus on student savings because that is where our grant funding is focused. But if you're also talking about big impacts in retention and grades, that is something that you'll want to address as well. Organization planning and feasibility, this lets us know that this is very likely to be completed and to last past the original semester where it ends. So preparedness is a big part of it. Having clearly defined roles, that's a really big part of it as well. Quantitative and qualitative measures, these are of course important. They're weighted ×2, and these need to be explained in detail. So if you're going to do, for example, some qualitative analysis, you wouldn't just say, we're going to do some qualitative analysis. You would say something like, we are planning on interviewing 3 students about the materials. We're planning on having a focus group. We're planning on doing a text analysis of open-ended responses in a survey. Those types of things are big here. And then quantitative, of course, if you're using some sort of mathematical model to test things, be sure to explain what that is here, such as an ANOVA or something like that. Clarity and alignment, this is the typo part of the rubric. So make sure that everything is very clear and that there aren't a lot of editing issues going on. If you have somebody who hasn't participated in writing the grants application read it, that's usually the best way to improve your clarity. And then alignment is all about making sure that your for example, your final semester meets what the final semester is on the timeline, that your transformation action plan meets the team members that you have, and that the team members are included in the budget wherever their roles are assigned within the action plan. So all of this needs to be very well connected, and that's part of why things have to be clear and aligned. So just another quick look at the timeline before we go. Applications are due on January 13th. After that, notifications go out on January 31st. And then Georgia State University, Middle Georgia State University, the kickoff meeting is going to happen after that. And I'm just going to stop the subtitles and then restart them. There we go. The kickoff meeting is at Middle Georgia State University. And then the projects can last up to spring 2021. So if you have any questions on that, contact me at jeff.gallant@usg.edu. and that is the best way to reach me. I also have a phone number that is in my email signature, but if you call the office, I may not be in. I run a lot of training sessions. I host meetings like this. Being able to answer emails is the easiest way for me to answer your questions. So contact me at jeff.gallant@usg.edu. Thank you very much for being here today and for viewing the archive on this later on. And I hope to get an application from you soon. Thank you.